Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about functional harmony, that is how chords function, and we're going to start out with talking about diatonic triads. Now this, by the way, is kind of a game changer. If you're familiar with this material, hopefully this is a good review, and if you've never seen this before, this, as I said, it's kind of a game changer in the way that you look at chords and harmony and that sort of thing. Excuse me. So, what I have up here is three scales that have been harmonized, and you see the word diatonic triads. Diatonic triads, these are all triads. Diatonic means in the key. So, you'll notice that all of the notes that are up here are all in the key of C. There's no sharps or flats. So every chord is made of diatonic notes in the key of C, and therefore they are diatonic triads. Here we have one flat. So every B is going to be flat, okay? And so all of these chords will be diatonic to the key of F. Every chord that's here is a chord that is contained in the key of F. Down here we have one sharp, so F sharp, anywhere there's an F sharp, anywhere there's an F is going to be an F sharp. These are all diatonic to the key of G. So in each case we have diatonic triads. Okay, so here's the diatonic triads of the key of C. You notice if I play the first triad that is built from 1, 3, 5 of the C scale, makes a C major triad. Now if I go from D, F to A, starting on the second note of the key of C, that's a minor triad because there's no F sharp that would make it a major triad. So D is a minor triad. When I get to E, this is also a minor triad because there's no G sharp, which would make that a major triad. F is a major triad. G is also a major triad. A is a minor triad. And then B is a diminished triad. Because if that were a major chord, that would be a D sharp and an F sharp. Because it's D and F, that is a B diminished triad. So these are the diatonic triads of the key of C. These are the only ones that we find in the key of C. If I come down here, you'll notice I have the same exact pattern. The first chord is an F major chord, then a G minor chord, because that B flat from the key signature makes it minor. ACE is A minor, B flat. DF is a B flat major triad. CEG is a major triad. DFA is a minor triad, and then E, G, B flat from the key signature is a diminished triad. The same thing in the key of G, using the one sharp key signature, which makes all of our F sharp, everything else is natural. GBD is a major chord. ACE is a minor chord. B, D, F sharp is a minor chord. CEG is still a major chord. D, F sharp A is a major chord. E, G, B is a minor chord. And F sharp A, C is a diminished triad. So, what you may have noticed is that in each case there is a pattern. And because each of these scales is identical except for the starting point, the intervals of the scale are all the same, so the chords are going to be the same qualities. The first chord is going to be a major chord. The second chord, the chord built off the second degree of the scale, is a minor chord. The chord that's built off the third degree is a minor chord. The chord that's built off the fourth degree of the scale is a major chord. The chord that is built off the fifth degree is a major chord. The chord that's built off the sixth degree is a minor chord. And then the chord that is built off the seventh degree of the scale is a diminished chord. Now because of that, we have something that we use to describe that relationship. We use Roman numerals to indicate the chords within a particular key. The first chord of the key, we call it a one chord. This is called the one chord, and it's a major chord. Now notice that the 4 chord, the chord that is built off of the 5th degree of the 4th degree of the scale, is also a major chord. And that's going to be of interest very shortly. The 5th chord, which is called the 5 chord, is also a major chord. The chord that is built off the 2nd degree of the scale is a minor chord, always in a major key. The chord that's built off the 3rd degree is also a minor chord. The chord that is built off the 6th degree of the scale is a minor chord. And the chord that's built off the 7th degree of the scale is a diminished chord. Okay? So, when we talk about chords and chord progressions, we talk about them in terms of numbers. Now, we use Roman numerals, not Arabic numerals, and the traditional way to do that is to use a uppercase Roman numeral for major chords and a lowercase Roman numeral for minor chords, and then a lowercase Roman numeral with a little degree sign after it for the diminished chord. So, if I have a chord progression that goes from C to F to G, that's a 1, 4, 5 progression. Sounds something like this. Okay, so that's a 1, 4, 5 progression. If I went 1, 2, 3, it would sound something like this. So when you hear people talk about, 3, 6, 2, 5 or 1, 4, 5, 1, that sort of thing, what they're talking about is functional harmony. That is not just referring to the chord as the name of the chord. For example, if I were to say the progression is C, F, G, that's true. But by saying it's 1, 4, 5, I'm talking about the actual functions of the chord within a key. And what that allows me to do is to change keys very easily, because as I noted before, the chords are the same for every key. So we can take a chord progression and move it to any key. And as soon as you can start to think about chord progressions in terms of these numerals, you will start to think in terms of functional harmony. And it really gives you a real different way of looking at the chords. So once again, the 1 chord in a major key is major. The 2 chord is minor. The 3 chord is minor. The 4 chord is major. The 5 chord is major. The 6 chord is minor. The 7 chord is diminished. Another way to look at that is that 1, 4, and 5 are major. 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and 7 is diminished. Memorize that. In any key, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord will be major chords. The 2, 3, and the 6 chord will be minor triads, and the 7 chord is a diminished chord. Okay, so we're going to start analyzing chord progressions using this particular pattern. So what I put up here is 3 different chord progressions, each in a different key. All right? So the first one is E minor, A minor, D minor, G, and then C. And what we do when we're analyzing a chord progression is we look at the progression and we determine what key it's in, and then we write the name of that key right up here with a colon after it. It says I'm in the key of C and I'm analyzing this chord progression. This is what we call in the key of C, the 3 chord is E minor, the 6 chord is A minor, the 2 chord is D minor, the 5 chord is G major, and the 1 chord is C major. That is a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 progression in the key of C. Sounds like this. One more time. 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And on the next lesson, I will be talking a little bit more about chord functions and how each chord in every key functions and how that works. So we'll get to that. The next one here is, oh, by the way, if I wanted to do this same progression in the key of G, I could go 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 in G, which would be B minor, E minor, A minor, D, G. So I could change the chord progression to a different key by thinking about the Roman numerals. So if I start to think about 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, that tells me how the progression works, and I can move it to any key that I want to. This next one here is G, E minor, C, and D. That is in the key of G. Those chords are found in fact, that's the only key that contains all those chords. It's 1, 6, 4, 5. So that is what we call a 1, 6, 4, 5 progression in the key of G. Now, if that sounds familiar, it is a very common chord progression found in popular music, especially in the 1950s. And that chord progression is still used, and it goes back even before that. That is, actually, it's called ice cream changes. And there's an interesting story behind that, ice cream chord changes. And that goes back to the fact that a lot of early rock and roll used this chord progression. And some of the professional songwriters in New York thought that music was kind of kids' music. And so they called this ice cream, they said it was ice cream parlor music. You could actually Google that. If you Google ice cream changes, they will talk about the 1, 6, 4, 5 progression. And that is a very common progression in popular music. And, you know, they were referring to it, like I said, as kids' music. And, well, it went on and became, you know, very successful, obviously. Anyway, so that is a 1, 6, 4, 5 progression in the key of G. If I wanted to do that same progression in the key of C, I could go C, A minor, F, G. And if you're familiar with the musical Grease, there's an entire song called Magic Changes that is about that chord progression. Very, very common chord progression. Okay, this next one is also a very common chord progression in today's popular music. I call it frozen yogurt changes, but nobody else calls it that. So if you Google that, that probably wouldn't come up. This is F, C, D minor, B flat. And this is in the key of F, and it's 1, 5, 6, 4. Sounds like this. 1, 5, 6, 4. If that sounds familiar, it's because a lot of pop tunes in the last 20 or 30 years have used that chord progression. In fact, if you have a little bit of time, which I think most people do right now, go to YouTube and type in Axis of Awesome 4 chords. And you will see an entire, there's several versions of it. Pick any version of it. It's a trio from Australia that does a very funny comedy routine about this chord progression. They play about 50 or 60 different songs that have this exact chord progression. It's funny, and it's also a little depressing because it just shows you how many songs use the exact same chord progression. Anyway, so these are 3 different very common chord progressions that can be moved to any other key. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is this. You notice that there's a C chord here, there's a C chord here, and there's a C chord here. In each case, it's the same chord, but it has a very different function. And chord progressions create a context, if you will, kind of like words and sentences, that we don't know what a word means or what part of speech it is until we see it in a sentence. A word, the same word could be a noun, a verb, or an adjective, depending on what sentence it's in. Same thing occurs here. This chord is going to sound different in this progression than it does in this progression and in this progression, and it has a different function in it. So I'm going to play each one of these progressions again, and listen to the C chord as I do it, and you'll notice that in each case the C chord has a different sound, has a different function in the progression. Starting out 3, 6, 2, 5, 1 in the key of C. Now we go 1, 6, 4, 5 in the key of G. And then finally 1, 5, 6, 4 in the key of F. Okay, so on the next lesson we will look at some other chord progressions, but in the meantime, keep in mind, we'll go back to this again, these are the chords of the key of C major. And you can move this to any other key, and in each case the 1 chord is major, the 2 chord is minor, the 3 chord is minor, 4 chord is major, 5 chord is major, 6 chord is minor, and the 7 chord is diminished.